Thanks for sitting down with us today. We actually interviewed our mutual friend Tom Tran earlier this week. He told me something interesting about you that I didn't know.
Uh-oh.
He mentioned that you actually used to race cars. Can you talk about that a little bit?
I did. Well, wasn't necessarily competitive racing, but I used to started off just working on cars. That's kind of how I paid, or I helped pay for some of my law school. Was I used to work on cars, change engines, change suspensions, things of that nature. Led into going to racetracks, helping with the tech inspection, so we get to be able to drive on the racetrack for free because it's not cheap.
So you didn't just race cars, you would take them apart and put them back together again.
Yeah, exactly. And then it was kind of grassroots and kind of built up to a point where my buddy opened up his own car shop. We did, I didn't drive, but I helped pit crew. Did a couple actually sanctioned events, enduro races up at Thunder Hill. So they did 13-hour enduro races up at Thunder Hill once a year.
That's interesting because I assumed that you were racing in San Diego, but I know you actually went to university in both Taiwan and Japan. So were you racing out there like Tokyo Drift style?
No, not even. No. So this all came about after once I started law school. Towards the tail end of my undergraduate down in San Diego, but more so when I moved back up here.
That's so funny. Yeah, I actually used to go to those races in Mira Mesa when I was in high school.
Okay. I wasn't out there.
We blew up a lot of engines in high school. That's so funny. So when you were a kid, were you that kid that would take their parents' stereo apart? Were you always tinkering?
I think so. I was always kind of playing around with stuff. I still do it. But yeah, just kind of take things apart, see how they work.
Did you study engineering at any point?
No, that's why I'm a lawyer. I suck at math. So the engineering major was definitely not
so this really was just a side
just
passion of yours?
Yeah.
That's so funny. How cool. Another thing that people are often surprised to hear about you is that you used to have a whiskey blog, Whiskey Wall.
I did. It was called the Whiskey Wall. It was kind of born out of monthly whiskey tastings I used to do, and yeah, that's kind of what I did for a while.
So, why whiskey? What's your earliest memory of drinking whiskey?
Actually, it wasn't that long ago. It was, again, when I moved back up here, probably a little after I finished law school, so not that long, maybe 15 years ago.
So this is something that you got into later.
Right. So it was more of a beer and sake guy for a while, and then one of my buddies introduced me to whiskey, and just kind of went from there.
So how long were you guys throwing events?
We did it for a good 4 or 5 years, once a month, and then the cost of whiskey just went up, and it got a little tough to navigate everything. Kids got older, and just all the details of trying to organize stuff got a little difficult.
You actually invited me to a really fun whiskey tasting a couple years ago on a rooftop in Financial District. Do you remember that?
Yeah, definitely.
There's an interesting story upon how you came upon that stash of whiskey.
Right. So that was from one of my probate estates. So someone had passed away, and part of the property that was in the condo was a stash of old whiskey that they just never drank. So back from the 50s all the way through the 80s and 90s, and the administrator didn't know what to do with it, so I just offered that I could make some money for the estate and put together a tasting for it. Yeah.
That is so cool. Does that happen a lot?
It's happened twice in my memory. Another one was just a friend. His grandfather actually passed away, and he was one of the maintenance guys at the golf course, at the Presidio golf course, and a lot of Japanese folks would come through and give him bottles of whiskey as a thank you gift, but he didn't drink, but he just kept it and stored it away. So when he passed, he had boxes and boxes of whiskey.
Well, I'm sure the deceased would want their whiskey collection to be drunk by people that actually appreciated it.
There
right?
you go. Exactly.
That's so funny. Be sure you let us know next time that happens.
Definitely will.
I pulled up the list of the whiskeys you had. You had Johnny Walker Black, Royal Salute, Old Parr, Jack Daniel's, Suntory Reserve, Old Suntory, and Suntory Special Reserve, all from the 50s and 80s.
Yep. It's different whiskey back then. It's completely different than what you have now. The whiskey's a different taste, different flavors. It's usually a lot older whiskeys went into them, even blends. Now it's just really young stuff, and it just doesn't taste the same.
It's really interesting. I learned something from you that night, and you pointed out how a lot of the American whiskeys, like Cuddy and Jack Daniels that people kind of look down upon now, during the early years were actually pretty amazing because it was a different distiller and different ingredients.
Right, so that goes back into the, what goes into the whiskey. So nowadays, Johnny Black is considered, kind of middle of the road, nothing great. But Johnny Black from 1950s and 60s is just
Incredible.
Amazing. It would outdo, if you just did them side by side to Johnny Blue now, it'd probably put Blue to shame. Yeah.
So you lived in Taiwan, you lived in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
What was San Francisco like when you returned to the city? Because you grew up here, right? You're a native.
I grew up in Marin, but I came into the city for high school. It's hard to say, because Taiwan was when I was an undergrad, so I actually went back to San Diego after I was in Taiwan. So I was back in San Diego for another 3 or 4 years before I came back up here. And then Tokyo was when I was up here for law school. It wasn't too much different, I don't think so. Yeah, as is now.
So now you're back here in San Francisco. You have a family,
Mm-hmm.
2 boys,
Yep.
both play basketball.
Yep.
The oldest is actually playing center at St. Ignatius, your old alma mater. What's it like seeing your oldest son dominate
Well, I don't know if he's.
at your old alma
I don't know
mater?
if he's dominating. He's doing well. I mean, he's still 15 and a sophomore, so there's a long way to getting to be able to say he dominated at high school basketball. So hopefully he's able to play varsity this year. He played with them for the summer, but it's just great to see. Going to the same school that I went to, a lot of the same teachers are still there. A lot of the administration's the same, so it's pretty cool. Pretty cool.
I follow them on Instagram, and they're both really disciplined about practicing daily, it seems.
I don't know about discipline. It's more of me kind of.
Well, it's pretty obvious
kicking
that
them in
they-
the pants a little bit to get them out there. So it's not always easy. But
It's really obvious that they respect their father.
it's a balance. You don't want to be the overbearing, Marinovich dad, and make them do things they don't want to do. So it's always a balance of trying to get them motivated to do it, make sure that they still enjoy doing it. At the same time, appreciating that it takes work to be good at something. So it's a fine line that I have to walk with them, and it ebbs and flows. Sometimes they hate it, and sometimes they surprise me and ask me to go out with them and do stuff. So it comes and goes.
What's the most important lesson that you want to teach your sons?
In general, or in terms of through basketball? I mean, I think through basketball. Well, actually, I think it goes through everything.
Both.
It's just working hard. You have to work hard to achieve something. It just doesn't come to you. You're just not all of a sudden a great basketball player. You're not all of a sudden going to be able to do really well on a test or do well in a career. You have to work hard at it. Every once in a while, you might luck out and be able to do something really well without putting much effort into it. But you have to put in that unseen time to get there, to get to where you want to be.
That's right.
And I think that's part of my, strategy with them, in not just basketball, but with their homework and everything like that, that they get the correlation of, okay, I did all this work, and this is what I was able to do. So just connecting that bridge in their mind, so, it translates all across everything.
The idea that successful people have natural talent
Mm-hmm.
is an excuse.
Right.
People don't see all the hard work that goes into that.
Exactly. So just making that connection is, I think, the lesson that I want to teach them.
That's really cool. You live in the Sunset now.
Technically Parkside for you
Parkside.
real estate folks. Yeah, by the zoo.
What's your favorite thing about Parkside?
I like that we're still in the city, but it feels more like a suburb. It's not too crowded. There's plenty of parking, and you get some peace and quiet out there. But it doesn't take that long to get into the city.
You have any favorite places out there? West Side in general?
As far as restaurants or anything like that, what do we like? Old Islamic Mandarin is kind of a
Very unique.
a
Chinese
very
food.
interesting place. You get a different convergence of folks there. You get the young people that hear about it. You get the Muslim folks because it's that type of food, and then you get the straight up Chinese people, just like their Chinese food. So it's always an interesting mix of people that are in there, and it's really small. So
Yeah, we used to
Yeah.
walk there. We live maybe 4 or 5 blocks away.
that's right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very cool.
Yep.
What else?
Brothers Pizza, that establishment's been there for a while. It's a pizza parlor that's run by Indian folks, and they do some fusion stuff. You can get a tikka masala sub, you can get, Indian veggie curry pizza and all different kinds of stuff. It stays open late. We can walk there, so it's a go-to place for us.
Good late night spot and guaranteed ingestion the next day.
Yep.
So all your hobbies and travels are really unique and adventurous. Your work as an estate attorney doesn't immediately appear that it would be that way. So how do you think those experiences of racing and throwing whiskey events and your travels throughout Asia have carried over into your work?
I think it broadens my view upon things. It's not, you can get stuck in evaluating somebody's estate plan or evaluating some of the post-death administration. You can kind of get stuck in a narrow view of what's going on, what the possibilities are. And I think it kind of opens it up a little bit as far as what, they can do with their estate. It also helps with, there's a broad diversity of people. Not everybody's the same. And just understanding different cultural sensitivities to estate planning, or even to, when someone's passed away, just being sensitive to, if they're Chinese or they're Japanese or Korean or anything like that, being sensitive to what might be offensive potentially, or maybe not something that they would want to do. So I think it helps in that manner, and just having a broad view of everything.
Absolutely. We live in one of the most diverse cities in the country, so.
Exactly.
What is your favorite part about being an estate attorney?
I think it's the ability to help people. Like, it's a tough, especially when someone's passed away, it's a tough time for people, and they're, the last thing they really want to worry about is the finances, or worry about, what needs to be done from an administrative or legal perspective. And just being able to take some of that weight and that pressure off of them, so they can, go through the natural part of just grieving when someone's passed away, to be able to take some of that stress away from them, or give them some clarity, because, there's all these questions. No, people don't have to deal with this every day. When someone passes away, what they need to do or what has to be done, to be able to take away some of that stress from them, and to be able to make them feel a little bit at ease. Okay, this is under control. Yes, there's things that we need to do, but it's under control, so they're not panicky and stressed out about that. So that's, at least for me, from a feelings perspective, one of the best things.
You really are an angel during what is probably the most stressful time in someone's life.
Not always. Sometimes I'm a pain. Certain things need to get done, but I try to, take their problems and throw them on my back, so they don't have to worry about it.
How would your clients describe you?
Probably easygoing, easy to work with. It's probably the best way they would probably describe me. Yeah.
So, a couple more questions. We're almost done here. In an alternate universe, if you weren't one of San Francisco's best estate attorneys, what would you be doing?
Oh boy. Oddly enough, I'm a pretty blue-collar guy when it comes down to things. Like, I guess just tinkering with stuff. I'd probably be some kind of contractor or something, like someone who
Working with your hands.
builds things and just does, for lack of a better way to put it, manual labor. Just likes to grind and work away at things. Yeah.
Awesome. Final question.
Alrighty.
Will you co-host a whiskey tasting with us before the end of the year?
All right, I'll commit to it. Yeah, definitely. Let's get it done. Now, I know you've been talking about it. I've mentioned it a couple times, so we just need to get it done.
We really need Chris Yu to curate the whiskey progression for us.
That'll be fun. We should do that.
We look forward to it.
Alrighty.
Thanks for your time today, Chris.
Thank you. Appreciate it.